Okay, so I want to start with something that might actually bother you a little bit. Your emergency fund looks fine, maybe even good. You've got a few months of expenses saved, it's sitting in a high yield savings account, earning a little interest, and every time you check your banking app, you feel that quiet sense of, okay, I've got this, I'm covered. And I'm here to tell you that feeling, that specific feeling of being covered, is exactly what's going to catch you off guard. Because the emergency funds that fail people aren't the ones that were never built. They're not the ones belonging to the people who spent everything and saved nothing. The ones that truly devastate people are the ones that looked completely adequate, right up until the moment they weren't. My name is Lyra, and the pattern I keep seeing over and over is people who did everything right losing financial ground anyway, not because they were reckless, not because they ignored advice, because they were comfortable, because they hit a number, felt the relief, and stopped questioning it. And here's the thing that nobody is saying clearly enough. Feeling financially prepared and actually being financially prepared are two completely different things in 2026. The gap between those two things is real, it's measurable, and it's exactly where emergencies do their worst damage. So, in this video, I'm going to show you what that gap looks like in real numbers, real situations, real consequences. And by the end, you're going to look at your emergency fund completely differently, not with panic, with clarity. Now, let me introduce you to Danny. Danny is 31. She's a project manager making $78,000 a year. Her monthly expenses run about $4,200, and her emergency fund, $25,000. That's nearly 6 months of expenses, above the traditional recommendation. Her friends genuinely ask her for financial advice. She's the responsible one in her group. By every conventional measure, Danny wasn't just prepared, she was exceeding the standard. Then life did what life does. Danny's mother had a stroke. Non-fatal, but serious enough that Danny flew home immediately and stayed for 2 weeks. She took unpaid leave because she didn't have another choice. The flights, the accommodation, 2 weeks without a paycheck. $3,100 gone in the first month. Emergency fund balance, $21,900. Month 2, she's back at work, but she's not really there. Her focus is split between her job and coordinating her mother's recovery from a distance. Her mother needs a rehabilitation facility. Insurance covers most of it, but Danny covers the gap $4,000, because that's what you do when it's your mom. Between that and regular expenses, her balance drops to $13,700. Month 3, her company announces a restructuring. Danny, who had been distracted and recently flagged for performance, is let go. Now she has no income, a mother still recovering, and $13,700 left. Unemployment kicks in, about $1,600 a month. Her expenses are $4,200. She's pulling $2,600 a month from savings to stay afloat. Balance after month 3, $11,100. Month 4, the job search. Her industry is contracting. She gets one real interview. She has to refresh her portfolio, pay for a professional tool subscription, look put together for video calls. Another $400. Regular gap continues. Balance, $8,100. Month 5, her mother is discharged but needs temporary in-home care. Danny contributes $800 that month because, again, that's what you do when it's your mom. Balance, $4,900. Month 6, she gets a job offer, $72,000, slightly less than before, but she needs income. She takes it. It starts in 3 weeks. But her lease is up, and the new role is in a higher cost area. First month, last month, security deposit, $5,400. Her emergency fund hits 0. She puts $500 on a credit card to cover the gap. Danny had $25,000 saved, more than the standard advice required. She ran out in 6 months, not because one catastrophic thing happened, but because 5 completely human, completely normal things happened in sequence. A sick parent, a job loss, a relocation. That's it. No hospital stays, no natural disasters, just life arriving all at once the way it sometimes does. Now, before you chalk that up to bad luck, I need you to hear this next part carefully. What happened to Danny wasn't a freak combination of events, it was a cascade. And cascades are exactly how emergencies actually work. One thing destabilizes your foundation, and that instability creates the conditions for the next thing to hit harder than it would have otherwise. There's actually a term for this in systems thinking: cascade failure. When one component fails, it doesn't just cause one problem, it weakens the entire system, making every subsequent failure worse than it would have been independently. Danny's family emergency didn't just cost her money, it cost her focus, which affected her performance, which made her vulnerable to a layoff, which arrived right when her savings were already drawn down. Those weren't 5 separate emergencies, they were one emergency in 5 acts. And the traditional emergency fund advice was never designed for that. It was designed for isolated incidents. Your car breaks down, you lose your job. One thing, one cost, one recovery. That world still exists in the advice, it just doesn't exist in most people's actual lives anymore. Here's the second problem, and this one is more subtle. The traditional calculation for your emergency fund is based on your monthly expenses, what you spend on a normal month when everything is fine. But emergencies don't care about your normal budget. When someone you love is in a hospital, you buy the flight. When you lose your job, you spend more on the job search than you ever anticipated. When life becomes chaotic, your spending becomes chaotic. Danny's $4,200 monthly budget was built around a stable life. Once the crisis hit, her actual monthly outflow was closer to $5,500 when you factor in everything. Her 6-month fund, in practice, lasted 4. And here's the third layer, the one almost nobody talks about. The feeling that your emergency fund is adequate makes you subtly less likely to build other kinds of financial resilience. You don't push harder in salary negotiations because the cushion makes you feel safe. You don't accelerate paying down high-interest debt because the savings account feels like protection. You don't think about diversifying your income because you feel covered. So your emergency fund doesn't just fail you during the crisis, it lulls you into a false equilibrium before the crisis, one that quietly limits your options precisely when you need them most. Let me give you one more example so this lands across different life situations. Omar is 38. He owns his home, has 2 kids, earns $95,000. Emergency fund, $28,000, about 7 months of expenses. Felt rock solid, stable job, responsible guy. In July, his HVAC system failed. Middle of summer, $11,000 to replace. Homeowner's insurance doesn't cover mechanical failure. 3 weeks later, a storm caused minor roof damage. Repair, $3,800. 1 month, $14,800 gone. Emergency fund balance, $13,200. 3 months after that, his company was acquired. His role was redundant. 60-day notice. He entered the job search with $13,200, just over 3 months of expenses, instead of the 7 months he thought he had going into summer. He found something in 4 months. He made it. But he spent the next 2 years slowly rebuilding what one bad summer erased. Omar didn't do anything wrong, he just built a number. What he needed was a structure. So let's talk about what that structure actually looks like. Because your emergency fund in 2026 cannot be one lump sum sitting in one account doing one job. It needs to be 3 layers, each one designed for a different kind of problem. Layer 1 is your liquidity layer. 3 months of your bare minimum expenses, rent, food, utilities, transportation, in a high-yield savings account you can access immediately. This is your first line of defense: immediate disruption, a sudden repair, a bridge between paychecks, fast, accessible, liquid. Layer 2 is your buffer layer. 4 to 6 months of your actual living expenses, not bare minimum, actual, in something slightly less immediate. A money market account or short-term CDs work well here. This is what sustains you through a real emergency: the job search that runs longer than expected, the medical situation that doesn't resolve in a week, the family obligation that extends. This layer buys you time without panic. Layer 3 is what I call the resilience layer. 2 to 3 months of what I'd call crisis overhead. This is the layer nobody builds, and the layer that would have saved both Danny and Omar. It covers the cost of fixing the emergency itself, not just surviving it: relocation expenses, medical out-of-pocket maximums, legal fees, professional development, temporary caregiving, the actual price tag of getting your life back to stable. Total target: 9 to 12 months, structured across 3 purposes. Not one account, not one number, a system. Now, I already know the objection forming in your head. Lyra, that's a lot of money sitting outside the market, and you're not wrong to think about that. But here's the question I'd push back with. What's the real return on avoiding $15,000 in credit card debt at 24% interest? What does it cost you when a crisis forces you to sell investments at the worst possible moment because you had no other option? Your emergency fund isn't competing with your investment portfolio, it's protecting it. Without the foundation, one bad season can unwind years of growth. Now take that 9 to 12 month baseline and adjust it for your actual life. If you own a home, add 1 additional month per 100,000 in home value. Homes are expensive to maintain, and insurance gaps are real. If you're self-employed or your income varies month to month, add 4 to 6 months minimum. You don't have unemployment to fall back on. Single income household, add 3 months. Every dependent you carry significant financial responsibility for, child, aging parent, add 2 months per person. Chronic health condition, add 2 to 3 months. Work in an industry known for volatility or frequent layoffs, add 3 months. Run that for your own situation. The number might feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is the truth. The smaller number you had before was the comfort.
Here's what I really want you to take from this. An emergency fund is not a savings milestone. It's not a number you hit and then move on from like a badge you've earned. It's a living part of your financial system, one that needs to be sized for your real life, your real risks, your real obligations, not the average life the original advice was written for. The people who come out of financial crises in a stronger position aren't necessarily the ones with the most money. They're the ones with the right structure. Security and growth are not opposites. Security enables growth. It's the foundation that keeps a crisis from becoming a setback that takes years to recover from. Danny didn't lose ground because she was irresponsible. She lost ground because she was comfortable with a number instead of confident in a system, and those are genuinely not the same thing. Danny rebuilt. It took 18 months. She now has $42,000 spread across 3 separate accounts, each serving a different layer. She earns roughly what she earned before, but she's not protecting a number anymore. She's maintaining a system. Her friends think she's being overcautious. She thinks they haven't been tested yet. And here's why this matters right now specifically. In 2026, the conditions that make emergencies expensive and prolonged are not improving. Job transitions are taking longer. Healthcare costs continue rising faster than wages. Climate-related home damage is becoming more frequent and more expensive. Caregiving responsibilities are increasing as populations age and family structures shift. The world your emergency fund needs to survive is harder than the world that advice was written for. That gap is only going to grow. So here's what I want you to actually do. Not eventually, this week. Write down what you actually spend each month, not your budget, what you genuinely spend. Multiply it by 12, that's your target. Then look at what you currently have and ask yourself honestly, which layer does this belong to? Do I have a liquidity layer, a buffer layer, a resilience layer, or do I just have one account trying to do 3 jobs at once? If you only have one account, you only have one layer. Start building the second one. Most people will watch this, feel briefly unsettled, and then go back to feeling fine. Because fine is easy. Fine doesn't require anything from you today. But you're here because you're not trying to feel fine. You're trying to actually be fine. And those are 2 completely different things, which is exactly where we started. If you want to go deeper on how to actually build the 3-layer system, which accounts to use, how much to put where, and how to balance this alongside investing, that video is right here. I'll see you there.